What's good, people? Foe back at you with another video, and today we are going to be discussing covenants, which ones I think are the best for PvE content and PvP content, okay? There is no best covenant for both, and we'll be discussing Soulbinds, conduits, the class ability that you get from covenants, why I think they're good, and when you'd want to use them, okay? Keep in mind, all this information should be current as of July 28th, 2020, and all this is subject to change before the release of Shadowlands. So let's get into it. First up, we need to talk about Soulbinds. So within each covenant, you have a Soulbind, which is basically a connection you can form with someone in that covenant. As you can see here, we have Nadia is an option in our Soulbind tree. You'd come to this little forge, and you'd open up your tree. You'd see Nadia here. Now, from my experience, the top one is usually for damage, the middle one is usually for healing, and the bottom one is usually for tanking. Now, that is not necessarily the case for all of them, so do keep that in mind. But you can see we have this tree-like system. It's basically like an artifact progression system, I feel like. But basically, you can pick an ability, go down a certain path, and within that path, you'll unlock more abilities and have more conduit slots that are associated with a certain category. As you can see with this one, it says it's a potency conduit. So each conduit is broken up into 3 categories. We have our potency conduits, our endurance conduits, and then we have a finesse conduits. Potency conduits increase your damage. Endurance is basically a defensive benefit for you, and then a finesse conduit is a utility benefit. So it's just kind of like a nice quality of life thing that you get added to an ability. And we will take a look at the conduit vendor, where he has all these available to us. We can see them. So as you can see on this endurance conduit, the cooldown of blur is reduced by 5 seconds. So it is an endurance conduit. It's going to help out our defensive capabilities. Reducing blur by 5 seconds is actually monstrous. And I do believe that these conduits do have the ability to get leveled up over time. Not exactly sure how that level up progression is going to work, but this could get reduced even more. So let's say blur is reduced by like 15 seconds at max rank of this endurance conduit. That's actually going to be huge. It's going to give us more survivability. So keep that in mind when you're going down your paths in your Soulbinds. And with these finesse conduits, you can see that your movement speed is increased by 5% after casting Fel Rush. So this is kind of like a utility thing. You're just getting increased movement speed after you cast Fel Rush. You're not really gaining anything in terms of survivability or damage wise. So that's why I like to call it a nice little quality of life kind of feature. And as you can see here, we have our potency conduits. Now these basically just increase your damage. Now let's take a look at these. These potency conduits are by far the best conduits you want to go with when you're picking your paths for your Soulbind. They're just so good, guys, so good. So this first one is Blade Dance, has a 5% chance to apply Essence Break. I do not think this one is as good as the other ones, and you can only have 3 potency conduits when you're going down a Soulbind path. So this one is by far the worst, I feel like, just because it's a 5% chance. 5% chance is too low for it to give any meaningful damage. It'll be nice when it does happen, but it just seems too low for it to be consistent enough and warrant what it's doing. Now we have Demon's Touch. Demon's Bite increases the damage of other abilities by 3%. This is just flat out busted. Demon's Bite, our main Fury generator, is just going to be increasing the damage of everything that we do by 3%. That's broken. That's just flat out disgusting, okay? We should basically be doing increased damage by 3% all the time, since we're always spamming Demon's Bite. So definitely recommend this as highest priority if you do not choose to go down the 3 potency path, but I highly recommend that. Next up, we have Growing Inferno. Immolation Aura's damage increased by an additional 10% each time it deals damage. So this is going to get better when there are more mobs. Each time Emo Aura's damage ticks, you get an additional 10% damage for your Emo Aura. So this is huge for AoE, huge for Mythic Plus. Just flat out, this is an amazing conduit. Going to be doing a lot of damage on your Emo Aura. Next up, we have Serrated Glaive. Targets hit by Throw Glaive take 8% increased damage from I-Beam. So obviously, you're going to want to maximize the potential of your Throw Glaive hitting as many targets as you can. So it can hit up to 3 targets, but if we take into account this one right here, which gives us the stacks of bombardment from this legendary, it can hit multiple targets and just be doing insane amounts of damage. So do keep that in mind. You're obviously going to want to like somehow weave this into your rotation. So you'd want to like throw glaive, then like I-beam. So each of those mobs is taking 8% more damage from your I-beam. But I do think it's just flat out better than this Dancing with Fate, since we're guaranteed the 8% increased damage, right, when we do just hit them with throw glaive. So potential synergy here with this legendary, but we'll see in time. So if you guys want the simple answer, the best covenant for you in PvE content is going to be Venthyr, most likely, if they do not adjust the numbers on the class abilities and how things are shaping out right now. The class ability you just get is so good. The other two are kind of lackluster, and being Kyrian and the Necrolords, and then Ardenwald being more geared towards PvP, and we'll talk about that after we finish discussing Venthyr. I can talk about Kyrian and the Necrolords a little bit. Let's go ahead and take a quick peek at the Soulbind tree again. We take a look here. Another reason why this covenant is so good is right here, Thrill Seeker. While in combat, you gain a stack of Thrill Seeker every 2 seconds or 4 stacks on killing an enemy. At 40 stacks, Thrill Seeker is consumed to grant you Euphoria, speeding up everything you do by 20% for 10 seconds. Thrill Seeker decays rapidly while you are not in combat. So just by being in combat and killing some enemies, you're going to gain stacks of Thrill Seeker. And then at 40 stacks, you gain this huge buff, which I kind of equivalent to like a Furious Gaze. So you just get a massive haste buff. So you're just increasing everything you do by 20%. So yeah, I consider this like a mini Furious Gaze, or even a better Furious Gaze, which affects everything that you do, right? This isn't just limited to like AoE or single target, since it's speeding up everything you do. So all of your stuff is just going off faster, just hitting more mobs and doing more damage overall. So definitely recommend picking Nadja if you do decide to go down this covenant. All right, guys, we are here in Orgrimmar, and we're going to be smacking this training dummy. And first, let's talk about the covenant class ability that you get. Sinful Brand. Branded enemy with the mark of the Venthyr, reducing their melee and casting speeds by 30% and inflicting 4,800 shadow damage over 8 seconds. Activating meta, apply Sinful Brand to all nearby enemies. First things first, this just does a significant amount of damage for the ability. It's a very short cooldown too. It's a 1-minute cooldown. It does good damage single targets, and the reduced melee and casting speeds is kind of like irrelevant. But as far as pure damage goes, the 5k, about overall 5k damage that it does is significant compared to the other covenant class abilities that you get. And it being such a short cooldown is huge. And the fact that you can apply it with meta makes it kind of have some AoE synergy. So that's kind of nice. It just kind of sucks that we don't have VOP, so you can only do it like every 4 minutes. So rest in peace, Division of Perfection. But the cool thing about this ability is, right, we can buff it with momentum. So we're going to be doing 15% increased damage. And as you can see, the tooltip has now changed. It is now saying 5,600. So you can enhance it with momentum. And I'm going to quickly go to Mnemonic, because it will also get affected by Mnemonic. So when we go into meta, so we're going to pop I-beam, we get increased haste. Now, it is going to be doing more damage since we have more haste, so it's going to be ticking faster. And as you can see, it's doing 6,100 damage over that 8 seconds. So the potential for this ability is just so good. And as you can see, we barely have done anything. We already have 13 stacks. And at that 40 stacks, we're going to get that huge attack speed, which is going to be just like helping us out overall in any sort of content that we do. But ideally, the way you want to use this is you'd want to pop your I-beam, go into Blade Dance, use your Sinful Brand. It's going to apply the dot for 8 seconds, and you do not want to pop meta before it reaches the full duration. So once the full duration is over, you can then pop meta again, and then it'll apply it to everything around you where you meta'd, and then it's getting the full duration of it as well. So let's take a quick peek at how much damage it did. Look at that. That is insane damage. Can be doing even more damage if we had more mobs grouped up. But all around, just good for single target and has huge AoE potential. That is why it is probably the best covenant for PvE. But yeah, I just wanted to showcase how you basically use that. So all in all, this is going to be the best covenant for you in PvP or PvE scenarios, mainly for the huge amount of damage that it does. Now, I'm going to briefly talk about the Kyrian ones and the Necrolord ones and why I think they're not that good. All right, we are here at the Kyrian Covenants, and let's take a look at the Covenant class ability that we get. Elysian Decree, Place a curing sigil at the target location that activates after 2 seconds, detonates to deal 1370 arcane damage and shatter up to 3 lesser soul fragments from enemies affected by the sigil or sigil. Don't know how you say it, but anyways, as we can see, it's a minute cooldown, same as the Venthyr one, but it deals significantly less damage, 1300. Basically, you'd have to have up to 4 mobs for it to be doing equivalent damage, and keep in mind, it's doing even less damage than if we were in meta. Also, you have to keep in mind that it has potential to do AoE with meta too from the Venthyr. So, kind of has multiple uses, whereas this one's just kind of like flat out AoE. You never want to use this on a single target boss. You're basically hardly getting anything. It's doing very weak damage, and you don't really need the lesser soul fragments that you get, since you probably want to be playing Demonic Appetite, and you can already get so much fury from the amount of shards that you're getting from this ability that it's kind of irrelevant how many fragments that you get from this ability. Now, I should have some kind of content showing on the screen, kind of showcasing this in like a dungeon. But yeah, basically you'd want to be pulling a lot of mobs all the time. And that's not kind of like practical, right? Kind of just depends what kind of a player you are, but more mobs, more damage this is going to do. I just don't think the damage that it does is significant enough to equate it being good in anything outside of Mythic Plus. Like, this would be literally just for Mythic Plus. And that's just not good. They need to make this a shorter cooldown, like a 30-second cooldown, and then you could like spam it more, and have it up for a majority of scenarios where you'd want it, where you'd want that AoE. It's just not ideal. Definitely need to buff the damage of it. I would maybe like say like make it shatter up to, maybe 3k is a little too high, maybe like 2500 range. I don't know. They need to do something with this ability. I think they should just make it a shorter cooldown. But yeah, it does not do enough damage to warrant it being good in anything outside of Mythic Plus. All right, we are here at Maldoraxis, and let's get into it. We have the class ability, Fodder to the Flame. Commission a duel to the death against a condemned demon from the Theater of Pain. Vanquishing your foe releases demon soul and creates a pool of demon blood that lasts for 30 seconds. Fighting within that pool increases your attack speed by 20% and reduces the damage that enemies deal to you by 10%. So at first glance, this looks alright. You're getting increased attack speed, but kind of like irrelevant, right? It's kind of like a throw seeker as well, but it's our class ability, and it's on a pretty long cooldown. It's a 2-minute cooldown, and we'll pop it right here just so you guys can see it. You can see this guy chases me, and usually you'd probably just want to cleave this guy down on whatever target you're hitting at the moment. So you can see that we have the increased attack speed. The pool is pretty large, so you have a lot of room to work with, and he drops a demon fragment. So you pick up the demon fragment, and since we're demon hunters, we're getting 20% increased damage for picking up a demon soul, so that's kind of nice. But does that warrant it being better than the Venthyr Covenant? And I think the answer is no. Being in this circle limits your mobility, even though it is quite large. Most situations as a demon hunter, like being a demon hunter, you're so mobile, like you kind of don't want to be like stuck in one spot or limited to one spot, since you're a demon hunter, man. You're kind of like flying all over the place. But I will say it's also kind of clunky because other people in your group can target the demon that comes out and kill it before it actually reaches you. So they need to fix that and have it just spawn on top of you and then you kill it, because it chasing to you like from here, and then you're over here, and then they kill it over there, and now the pool is not where you are. Kind of sucks. Let's say you're tanking the raid boss here, and then the ranged kill it by the range. Now you're not in melee range since your pool dropped over here. So that is also a fault of it. Should not be able to be targeted by other people, and warlocks can enslave it. So that's kind of cool, but at the same time, it cucks you and your damage. And it seems to me like this is more of a tanking thing, right? Because when you're tanking, you're kind of just sitting in one spot and eating, or you're trying not to move as much, and you're gonna be taking 10% reduced damage when you stand in your pool. So I think it's more of a tanking thing. Increased attack speed, you're kind of just getting your mitigation up more. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Don't really seeing the 2-minute cooldown being that useful. The increased damage you get from the demon soul is cool, but doesn't compete with the Venthyr Covenant, since you can get Thrill Seeker, which is basically what this does, and is too long of a cooldown and doesn't do enough damage to compete with the single targetness and the potential for AoE in that Sinful Brand. All right, folks, we are here at the Night Fae Covenant. Okay, we are in Ardenweald. Now, this Covenant is basically going to be your PvP selection. Now we look at this ability, the Hunt. Charge to an enemy, inflicting 2800 nature damage and rooting them in place for 3 seconds. The target is marked for 1 minute, increasing your fury from demon spot against them by 50%. You may reactivate the Hunt every 30 seconds to teleport behind the marked target, ignoring LOS. Things to note here, it's a 3-minute cooldown, a very long cooldown. That being said, it's a very powerful cooldown and that it can ignore LOS. It doesn't do that much damage, 2800, doing far less than Sinful Brand, and that's a minute cooldown. So already kind of scratches it out from PvE. It's only used on a single target since it's charging to an enemy. So this is already leaning towards a PvP combat focused ability, right? The LOS is huge, right? This is gonna help you land burns. Let's say you use it. You do have to be in LOS to cast it first, but then after that, you can maybe just go smack the DPS or a melee cleave, smack them, mortal rush them. You see they're gonna get some drinks. Oh, psych, you hit the ability. Now you're in LOS of them again. You teleport behind them, hit them with the stun, and then you go into a rift. And since you're increasing your fury from them, it's going to give you more fury to work with so you can spend it more on burns. Okay, that's going to be the main game of a demon hunter when you're playing PvP. Now, if we take a look at the Soulbinds really quick, I do think this is probably the way to go with Nia. We take a look here. The first row doesn't really matter. A finesse conduit is just kind of a nice buff. Right here, you'd want to go with the potency conduit. I didn't activate it, but I think this is the potency row. Yeah, this is your endurance, this is your finesse. So this is going to be your potency row. This is the row you're going to want to go because you're going to want to do more damage. This is actually kind of nuts since you're going to be interrupting the healer anyways, or any sort of caster. It's just extra damage on top of your interrupts. So that's kind of cool. And this just falls in line with the potency row anyways, that you're just going to be doing more damage overall anyways. So. And this stuff doesn't really matter. Oh, Grove Invigoration. When you use your Nightflight class ability or spell, gain 10% mastery, slowly fading over 5 minutes. So every 3 minutes, you'll get 10% mastery, and that's going to just fade over time in 5 minutes. I don't know, like, you just lose 2% mastery in like 1 minute, and then you'll just have no mastery by the end of 5 minutes, or no increased mastery by the end of 5 minutes. I assume that's how it's going to work. Like every minute, you just lose 2% mastery. But that lasts a long time, over 5 minutes, and this is a 3 minute. So you could basically just refresh it when this comes back up off cooldown. So that's kind of cool. All right, we are back in Orgrimmar, and I'm going to be showcasing why the Hunt is so good for PvP. For my talents, right, I want to be using Mana Rift, Mortal Rush, and Detainment to just help land burns. I think you probably mess around with Detainment in this third row, but basically you're going to pop your ability. It's going to cast a channel, and then it's going to root them in place. All right, and then your fury generation on them is just going to be insane, and then it's going to put a debuff on them, right, the Hunt, and that just shows that we're getting our fury generation, but we can ignore LOS and teleport behind them. All right, so teleport behind them, stun, and then we'd go into burn, and then we can do this twice within that 1 minute period. So it is pretty cool way to just come in and sneak up on them and land easy burns. And then during this time, while we're waiting for it to come back up, we can just mortal rush across the other enemies. And then you can see it right here, mortal wounds, healing effects reduced by 25%, lasts for 10 seconds. And we can also pretty much have like a huge amount of uptime on it because we're going to be playing with the shortened Fel Rush cooldown legendary. So our Fel Rush will only be 7 seconds. So basically we can keep reapplying mortal wounds before it even falls off. So that's pretty insane. We can go ahead and teleport again, do the stun into a burn. Obviously, this is just some quick little gameplay on how to do it ideally, but you guys get the gist of it and as to why it can be pretty annoying to deal with, and just another way for us to land more burns and the healer faster. That's going to be it for this video, guys. If you guys did like the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Until next time, dudes. Peace.